Title: The Dog That Refused to Let the Dead Lie. The German Shepherd's bark shattered the solemn quiet of Lakefield Memorial Funeral Home like a lightning strike on a clear day. Standing tall and trembling, his hackles raised and eyes locked on the gleaming mahogany coffin at the front of the room, Max let out bark after bark, each one more desperate than the last. The minister's prayers were drowned out, the muffled sobs of the mourners replaced by gasps of confusion. "Get that damn dog out of here!" Deputy Chief Brent Taylor snapped, his face flushed and his jaw clenched. From the back of the room, Detective Daniel Reardon moved instinctively toward the disturbance. Two officers had grabbed Max by his harness and were trying to drag him away from the casket, but the dog broke free. With stunning force, he charged the front of the chapel, knocking over the floral arrangements and shaking the funeral home to its emotional core. People gasped. Sarah Langston, the grieving widow, covered her mouth with trembling hands. But Reardon wasn't looking at her. He was watching Max. He'd seen this dog at more crime scenes than he could count. He knew Max's grief. He'd seen him mourn. This wasn't mourning. This was alerting. "Stop!" Reardon barked, raising his hand. "Open it. Open the casket. Now." A stunned silence fell. All eyes turned to him. Max growled low and persistent, his body rigid with focus. And when the lid creaked open, what they found inside would change everything they thought they knew. Detective Daniel Reardon had been with the Lakefield Police Department for 23 years. For 15 of those, he'd served under Chief Charles Langston, a man he admired more than anyone else alive. Reardon was 46 now, weathered. His once black hair was now peppered with silver. The lines on his face were carved deep, each one a chapter of grief, laughter, and relentless justice. 3 years earlier, Reardon had lost his wife, Emily, to ovarian cancer. Since then, his house had become a cavern of silence. He buried himself in work, taking solace in paperwork and the predictable clatter of the squad room. What most people in Lakefield didn't know was that Reardon's relationship with Langston stretched back further than his first day in uniform. As a 16-year-old, Reardon had been caught breaking into a liquor store. But instead of tossing him in the system, Officer Langston had brought him home for dinner. Over meatloaf and mashed potatoes, Langston had offered a different path: community service and weekly mentorship instead of juvenile detention. That night had changed everything. "You've got good instincts, son," Langston had told him once. "Trust them, even when no one else does." Chief Charles Langston had been a pillar of Lakefield for over 3 decades. At 58, he still stood tall, 6 feet 2 inches, broad-shouldered, with steel gray hair and a neatly trimmed beard. His presence filled a room even when he said nothing. He was fair but fierce, a man who could laugh with a kid one minute and stare down a cartel enforcer the next. That he and his wife, Sarah, had no children. Not by choice. Sarah had suffered 3 miscarriages early in their marriage. Instead, they had poured their love into Lakefield and into Max, the German Shepherd who had once been Langston's K-9 partner. Max had been injured in a warehouse bust gone bad. A fiery explosion had killed his handler and left Max deaf in one ear. Langston had stayed with the dog through weeks of recovery. When the department retired Max from active duty, Langston brought him home for good. Sarah Langston was every bit her husband's equal. A 3rd-grade teacher at Lakefield Elementary for 28 years, she was beloved by generations of kids. Now 56, her once vibrant auburn hair was touched with gray. The front rows of the funeral were filled with her students, clutching handmade cards and tissues. Brent Taylor, the deputy chief, had been Langston's second-in-command for 8 years. Ambitious and meticulously groomed, Taylor had always been respected, but never truly loved. Not the way Langston was. And standing quietly near the back of the room was Dr. Elena Fisher, the county medical examiner. New to the community at 38, she'd already made a name for herself. Methodical, analytical, always asking the extra question. Something about the chief's death report had nagged at her from the start. Langston had been found dead in his home just days earlier, collapsed on the couch, no signs of struggle. Paramedics had declared it cardiac arrest. Taylor had ordered a rapid funeral to give the community closure, but the moment Max charged that coffin, everything changed. What followed in the hours after the casket was opened would send shockwaves through Lakefield. Langston wasn't dead, barely breathing, his heartbeat faint, skin clammy and pale, but very much alive, doctor. Fisher confirmed it with stunned precision. Reardon stood frozen, his mind spinning. Around him, mourners screamed, cried, clutched each other. Max barked triumphantly, tail wagging wildly. Langston was rushed to the hospital, his status critical. The room he'd been prepared in was quickly sealed as a crime scene. And Brent Taylor? Gone. Disappeared the moment the chaos erupted. As Reardon pieced the puzzle together, one thing became chillingly clear. Someone had tried to bury Langston alive. The investigation moved fast. Reardon, granted temporary command, ordered a full forensic sweep of the funeral home and Langston's residence. What they found was damning. Evidence of drugging, a broken needle in the casket lining, missing case files from Langston's home office. Langston had been leading a covert investigation into a drug trafficking ring tied to some of Lakefield's most powerful figures. A ring so deep-rooted that its tendrils reached the mayor's office, the courthouse, and even the LPD command staff. Taylor had been feeding information to a mysterious figure known only as Kingfisher, a name whispered in cartel circles for years. Surveillance footage from Langston's home showed Taylor entering through a side door days before the chief's collapse. A separate set of digital files recovered from a hidden SD card in Langston's dress uniform confirmed everything. The payoffs, the surveillance, even the plan to eliminate Langston permanently. And the final piece? Reardon's name had been on the hit list. A.S. Langston fought for his life in the ICU. Reardon worked alongside federal agents brought in after the attempted assassination. They uncovered a network of corruption that stunned even the most jaded among them. Judge Malcolm Dane, long considered a fair-minded jurist, had dismissed multiple cases against cartel suspects. Mayor Sharon Bellington, beloved for her charity work, had accepted hundreds of thousands in donations from shell companies tied to narcotics money. And Commissioner Leonard Bryce, the man who had appointed Langston chief in the first place? He wasn't just complicit, he was Kingfisher. Langston had known. And he'd known that the only person he could truly trust was Reardon. When Langston finally woke, his voice was hoarse, but his mind sharp. "They think I don't remember," he rasped, gripping Reardon's hand. "But I remember everything." Within 48 hours, a coordinated raid led to over 24 arrests. Judge Dane was pulled from the bench in the middle of a hearing. Mayor Bellington resigned in disgrace. And Commissioner Bryce was taken into custody at his lakeside mansion, the evidence against him overwhelming. Taylor didn't go quietly. Tracked to a motel outside Lakefield, he'd armed himself and taken a hostage. Reardon led the negotiation personally, eventually talking him down. Taylor sobbed as he was cuffed, muttering, "He promised I'd be untouchable." Langston testified in court weeks later, his body still weak, but his voice clear. Max received an award from the governor for exceptional service. A special medal was designed just for him, engraved with a single word, Guardian. Lakefield healed slowly. Langston retired not long after. At the ceremony, he handed Reardon a folded piece of paper. "Letter of recommendation," he said. "For Chief." Reardon shook his head. "I'm not ready." "You'll never feel ready," Langston replied. "But you are. It's been 2 years now." Max still limps a little on rainy days. Langston and Sarah travel more. Reardon, now chief, walks the halls of the LPD with quiet authority. And in a frame above his desk hangs a photograph. Langston, Reardon, and Max, taken on the day the truth came out. The day a dog refused to let his master be buried alive. And the day a town began to believe in justice again. End of story.